Welcome back to Loyalty Leaders Podcast. I'm David Feldman, Chair of Loyalty Summit, and with me is Phil Rubin, who shouldn't be a stranger to most of you, but in case you haven't met Phil before, Phil, maybe a quick intro about yourself and your background in loyalty.
Sure thing, David. Thanks for having me here. And hi, everybody. Thanks for listening and watching. I'm Phil Rubin. I am the founder of Grace-Based Matters. You may recall my prior firm, which was called Our Dialogue. We sold that in about 5 years ago. And my background in loyalty started in the airline industry, not surprisingly, though the surprising part might be that it was 35 years ago. And since then, I've had an opportunity to work across a number of different industries with a lot of leading global brands. And I'm happy to still have fun work to do, like doing this with David Feldman in Loyalty Summit.
And for those who don't know, Phil is our event chair of Loyalty Summit CXM, which is coming up in Los Angeles on February 5th and 6th, right, Phil?
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th in Los Angeles, and it's our second one in Los Angeles. And we've also held Loyalty Summit CXM in Copenhagen and Zurich as well. Fantastic event. Can you tell us a little bit about Loyalty Summit CXM? And for those that maybe might be familiar with our traditional travel Loyalty Summit, which this last year was in Chicago and London, can you tell us how Loyalty Summit CXM is sort of different, or what people can expect if they haven't been to a CXM event before?
Yeah, I'm happy to. The big difference is that whereas Loyalty Summit is really travel focused, Loyalty Summit CXM has a broader aperture in terms of industries. There's still going to be a little bit of travel, but it's not going to be travel focused. It's going to cut across retail, other services, businesses, fast moving consumer goods, sports and entertainment, and financial services, payments, and partnerships. So a broader aperture, more focused on strategic issues. Not that Loyalty Summit isn't, but we're really trying to sort of raise our game in terms of positioning this conference as for C-level leaders, for senior executives focused on customers across brand, loyalty, customer experience, and of course, data and payments.
So Loyalty Summit CXM is coming up on February 5th and 6th. And we're at the Beverly Hilton, which is the same venue that we were at last time, for those who attended Loyalty Summit CXM in Los Angeles before. Can you talk about a little bit about the theme of this year's event, and perhaps some of the session highlights that we're looking forward to?
Yeah, what we're trying to do this year is keep the focus on loyalty innovation, this time being about, number one, it's about time that loyalty prioritizes innovation much more. We're, approaching the half-century mark of modern loyalty, going back to 1979. So we're not quite at 50 years, but we're certainly getting close. And our view, and certainly my view, is that loyalty is stuck, that it needs to be sparked towards innovation and doing things differently than have been done over the last 45 plus years. And then it's also very brand driven, because loyalty by definition is an emotion. And the brand is really the part of the enterprise that's designed to emotionally connect and resonate with customers. So innovation is going to be a big focus. Brands are going to be a big focus. The future of loyalty is going to be a big focus. We're going to kick it off talking about why loyalty is stuck, and really go from there with a number of really great tracks, sessions, speakers, and again, lots of C-level and kind of senior executive leaders that are focused and engaged around the customer, around loyalty, and around customer experience, and how that all revolves from a brand standpoint.
When I think back to our last Loyalty Summit CXM in Los Angeles, one of the themes that really came through from a lot of the speakers and a lot of the loyalty leaders that were, part of the discussions, during the sessions, was the importance, the challenges, and opportunities, but also just different ways of approaching the way loyalty interacts with the other departments in the organization. And whether we're talking about the C-suite, whether we're talking about where loyalty is positioned within the organization, whether it's talking about the day-to-day challenges that loyalty leaders have in terms of stakeholder management or getting buy-in from other departments. And what really stuck out to me in those discussions was the commonality across various industries, various verticals. Almost every loyalty leader had, you could put a blindfold on in terms of, and sort of, blank them out, behind a black screen as to who was the speaker, which company did they work for. And it was very similar messages coming from every single loyalty leader. What also struck me is that those conversations were no different to the same things that we hear from loyalty leaders at the travel loyalty summit. We're talking about hotel leaders, airline frequent flyer leaders. Doesn't matter the size or the scale of the loyalty program. The challenges were uncannily similar. That was my takeaway. I'm interested to see your insight if you took away the same thing, and across both the Travel Loyalty Summit and previous Loyalty Summit CXM, and if you think that anything has changed in that, or if that's still very topical. Interested in your thoughts.
I don't think it's changed enough, but your points are spot on and very much, especially based on the feedback that we got from last year. People recognize that this is not easy. Loyalty's hard. That's one of the things that makes it, in my view, stuck where it is. And it's why we've been really selective about the topics, the themes, or the tracks, and who's going to be speaking about what, because there are certain things, the common challenges, right? How do you do loyalty wrapped around a brand? How do you make a business case and create the right metrics for loyalty so that you get buy-in, not just from the C-suite, but especially from the CFO, because that's who the CEO is going to turn to get the head nod to say, yes, let's do this. We're going to have a whole track on loyalty without points, where we're going to have two really phenomenal case studies of loyalty without points. One being from the NBA, topical because it's basketball season. Of course, I think for the NBA, it's always basketball season. And the other from AKA hotels and hotel residences, which in a tough category, travel and hospitality, is bucking the trend with a membership fee-based approach to loyalty. And then, of course, we're certainly going to talk about technology and where technology is both a stuck point, but also how there are some new players and some new approaches with respect to technology that make it easier, that don't require this complete replatforming that so many companies go through when they're undertaking a loyalty strategy. So I think we're covering, finance, measurement, technology, enabling technology, payments and partners, brands, and some really great case studies that we're going to do back to back on loyalty without points, where we're going to then have a conversation from the two leaders at the NBA and AKA to talk about what are the common challenges they had doing loyalty differently, which is a whole nother set of challenges because everybody's comfortable with points and rewards. So when you don't do points and rewards, you get a lot of people going, wait, is this really loyalty? And of course, we'll provide the answers in the affirmative to questions like that. So I think we're going to have a good cross section of perspectives from C-level, CMOs, obviously, a couple of company presidents that are going to be speaking, some founders, some emerging markets like cannabis, like the whole home space with companies like Built and Stake, and now Mesa coming in to that category, which is a great illustration of loyalty in a new place where there's a huge amount of spend taking place that heretofore hasn't really been recognized or rewarded.
It's interesting that you talk about, sort of the topic about loyalty being stuck, and I think that, you and I have had lots of conversations about this, and, it's interesting because I think when we as an industry have been talking about various, versions of that statement for a little while now, initially it was around technology. It was around legacy platforms holding programs back from functionality or ability to talk to members, using the buzzwords of one-to-one and personalization and things like that. That was sort of part of that conversation, but there were bigger technology constraints and platform constraints on the ability of programs to even, offer more personalized promotional opportunities or even more granular data analytics. That was a big part of the conversation for a while, both in travel and retail and across sectors and verticals. And I think that more recently, I don't want to necessarily say pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, but certainly more recently, I think that conversation has turned to, a bit more about the commoditization of points and miles loyalty programs. I don't necessarily want to use the word devaluation, but even if we focus on travel programs, hotels, airlines, even the biggest ones, the reality is whether it's a focus on cost, whether it's a focus on, changing the target groups of customers or expanding the target groups of customers that we want to bring into our loyalty programs. The reality is that the top end of value perhaps in programs isn't really what it used to be in a lot of cases. And certainly that's the perception. Reality is almost irrelevant because the perception is what is important. And you said loyalty is about a feeling, it's about attitude. So the perception is really what's going to motivate people. What I find interesting in the discussions that we've had in the industry recently is that, if the biggest programs, your hotels, your global frequent flyer programs are suffering from this affliction. There's a lot of erosion in loyalty. A lot of people saying, why should I bother anymore? Or a lot of people going, you know what, sure, I'll join the program, I'll earn the miles, but, I'm not really going to go out of my way to change my behavior anymore. I'm in an airline case. I'm not going to take an inconvenient schedule, a higher price on a fare, and a multi-stop itinerary instead of taking this other airline over here who's sort of my Girl Friday airline, where it might be more convenient time or a better price or it's a non-stop. Because you know what? I don't care as much because the airline actually isn't looking after me or treating me as a VIP as much as they used to be anymore. Now, if that's happening to the biggest programs, the benefit for the global frequent flyer programs is that air travel and, travel in general is still sexy. People are still willing to earn the miles because they can still take their family on a family vacation or to see grandma in Wichita for Thanksgiving, whatever it might be. But if you're not a sexy global frequent flyer program and you're a more day-to-day retail program, for example, or something that's even more commoditized, that presents a challenge, doesn't it, in terms of standing out? So to your point about the discussion about non-points and miles rewards, a few years ago, it was a little bit more, I don't want to say risque, but out there in terms of, well, how can you have a loyalty program or a loyalty strategy that doesn't involve points and miles or some kind of currency that can then be redeemed? But it's almost like the points and miles programs have lowered themselves to the level where actually other alternatives might motivate customers better. I'm throwing that out there as a controversial topic. I mean, do you think that fits into the discussion that you sort of outlined? Do you think that that's another issue that we're not touching on yet?
It's totally aligned with the notion of loyalty being stuck. Loyalty in the traditional sense is stuck. If you think about it, and I think the airlines are a great example, the opportunity cost of not flying your number one carrier has gone down.
Mm-hmm.
People are increasingly because of the way the more affluent prioritize travel, they're willing to pay for that better experience versus going through the pain and the questionable trust to concentrate with one brand, believing that that's going to create long-term satisfaction with the customer experience. So that opportunity cost has gone down. And you also have, and we're going to have a whole session on this in the payment and partnership track, about how non-travel co-brand cards, so think Chase Sapphire, some of the Capital One products have, and of course American Express, have supplanted the airlines as the go-to, where am I going to focus my spend so that it leads to a better outcome for me in the future. And that's it. The other thing that we're going to be doing around this very idea in LA is two things. Number one, we're going to have some new research released and presented by at least one, if not maybe two entities. We already have a commitment from Wise Marketer Group to present some new research. And there's another group who wants to present, at least one more group that wants to present some new research for the first time. And then we're also going to have a session on, and this is topical because AI is the bright, shiny object for last year and for this year. Yuping Lou Tompkins from Loyalty Science Lab at Old Dominion University is gonna do a session where she's going to present essentially AI for loyalty in the form of creating artificial empathy, which goes back to that notion of loyalty's got to go beyond transactional, and things that brands do need to connect with people on an emotional basis for them to be more than willing to concentrate, to pay a premium, to go out of their way to do business with that brand. So I think we're going to have not only some great case studies, we're going to have some great research, both practical, applied, but also academic and perspectives to match. They're going to get help. At a minimum, what we wanted people to do is to come to this with an open mind, hear what other people have to say, look at the data and research insights that support some of these ideas, and then hopefully be inspired to think a little bit differently about what they're doing, with an eye towards really thinking about loyalty way beyond programs and even customer experience, and how does loyalty get infused in the brand, and how does the brand infuse a loyalty strategy as well.
You know, it's interesting. A few moments ago, a keyword you mentioned was also trust. You know, and I think that, you know, I trust, whether we're talking about partnerships, whether we're talking about consumers to the brand, you know, it's a huge issue. I mean, I sort of touched on devaluations and points and miles not being worth what they used to be, or elite status not treating you as VIP as it used to anymore. I mean, people accept change happens, but brands, and not just in relation to loyalty, it can be just in general brand positioning, marketing, and other things. It's very easy for a brand to breach trust with their customers or potential customers. And it's very hard to get it back. But loyalty the damage is almost exponential, because if you are loyal to a brand, whether they have a formal loyalty program or not, but it's even worse if they have a formal loyalty program, in my opinion, because loyalty is about a relationship. And it's just like in your personal life, in relationships. If somebody breaches your trust and you're in a relationship with them, or you have a close relationship with them, versus a stranger who breaches your trust, the impact is very different. You know, the impact is perhaps minor with a stranger. Somebody you have a relationship with, it's two-way. There's some kind of personal investment in that. A breach of trust really damages that relationship. And so it is in your personal life, so it is with loyalty relationships between consumers and brands. And, you know, I think that, you know, to your point again, loyalty being stuck, but my question to you is about, it's easy to see that in the travel space. Do you think that it is the same across verticals or in industries, or do you think that there is perhaps a difference, you know, in that trust issue, say travel versus retail and other sectors, you know, or, you know, is it simply that's a common baseline, that's table stakes for everybody?
I think the stakes are higher in some industries and the expectations are higher perhaps in some industries versus others. We're going to see some of that in the research that's going to be released in LA, but certain things are universal. So if you think about data, the loyalty quid pro quo is, I'll give you all my data if you make my world a little bit better. You give me a better experience, remember me, keep me informed, all the drivers of loyalty. We won't go into all those right now. But one of the most fundamental is my data. And if I'm going to give you access to all my data, my expectation is you're going to be responsible with that. On a fundamental level, you're going to keep it secure, not let it get breached. On a more practical day-to-day level, you're going to show me that you know me. You're going to remember what I bought. You're going to give me shortcuts to get the most out of doing business with you. And I'll use that as a way to plug one of the sessions that we're doing. We're going to have a chief privacy officer doing a session with a privacy consultant, and it's a woman named Karen McGee from Levi Strauss and Company, and she was the first chief privacy officer at Levi Strauss, iconic American brand, but certainly a global brand. And she's going to talk about their journey and what they are doing, and importantly what they've learned. And when you think about the slippery slope of trust, privacy is at one of the most foundational elements of that. I just came back from about 10 days in Europe, and one of the great things about going to Europe is GDPR compliance. So when you go to a website, it's super easy to manage your preferences for that site and to control how much data they're going to consume, to make it very easy to manage your settings and frankly, a lot easier than it is to do in the US. So it's almost like the reverse of a cleanse from a data privacy standpoint, to go to Europe and have the opportunity to more effectively and efficiently manage your privacy settings online. That's just one example. But brand trust, loyalty, customer experience, you think about going back to travel, which is so familiar to you, or regular operations in an airline, right? I have a reasonable amount of trust that you're going to get me from point A to point B within some reasonable set of parameters associated with my itinerary. And there are times where that's out of my, it's totally out of my control, but it's sometimes out of the airline's control because of weather, or a president landing or taking off, or whatever those factors are, mechanicals. But what we learned in travel is you can screw up, but if you acknowledge it and you fix it quickly, you can regain that trust and that loyalty. But it goes back to transparent communication, setting expectations as early in the process as you can, and in some cases going above and beyond to let customers know what's going on and what you're going to do to mitigate whatever the negative effects are of that experience.
I 100% you're right. And I'm glad you brought up these other issues, because my next question to you was going to be about, flowing on from trust. The obvious, next point is, data, privacy, regulation, GDPR, obviously, but, we have privacy legislation springing up everywhere, whether it's Canada, whether it's California, whether it's other states in the US following the lead as well. It's almost like everybody's jockeying for position in terms of, oh, we've got the best, data. Now, some of it consumers might say is beneficial. Some say it's a pain in the backside. Some say it makes no difference at all. That's not the point of the discussion. The point of the discussion is, if you're a loyalty manager, you have to have a strategy around this. And in some jurisdictions, the punitive side of the regulatory environment is quite severe if you are too blasé in your approach to how you manage this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a couple of really good points. there is a lot of legislation being talked about. I don't think you need to be that much of an observer of federal politics and what's happening to. I think it's reasonable to expect that legislation is not going to happen on a federal level in the U.S. certainly in the next 2 years. That will be surprising given the sort of the cast of characters and the focus on there being too much regulation and too much imposition from the federal government. But you're certainly going to see certain states like your state of California, where they're going to be vigilant in looking after consumers and their data and their privacy. I mean, we're also seeing on the flip side, we're also seeing, and we certainly saw it seeing it in the airline industry. We heard about it from Luke Bondar at Loyalty Summit, and that is, as some of the changes take place or have the potential to take place with respect to credit card transaction fees or other factors that are going to be contributing to the decline of certain category co-brand cards and the revenue that flows through that, you see airlines, and certainly actually in this case airlines, following retailers and wanting to get into the publishing business because of their data, because of the physical assets that they own, the physical touch points and the digital touch points that they have to reach an audience, a high value audience. So there's a lot of gray area to all these topics, but that's why getting everybody together in a room for a couple of days, and when I say everybody, we're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. We're talking about no more than a couple hundred people, to keep it a more intimate setting, which is part of the value prop of Loyalty Summit CXM. These conversations that'll take place both on stage, but also, networking and after hours, are really important, especially given some of the brands that we're going to have here, to give people the perspectives both from within, but also beyond the industries that they play in terms of what, challenges, but also opportunities and where they've learned and some of their great successes that we'll hear about.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm glad you put that point up. I mean, one of the things that we see constantly in the feedback for Loyalty Summit CXM is everybody values the networking opportunities, and the hallway conversations and the dinner and the drinks conversations, and even just around the croissants over in the morning or morning tea. Is everybody, really, really values those opportunities, and they can be as interesting sometimes as what we hear from the stage. Obviously, it's a very senior level event. We have a lot of very, very high level attendees and speakers. If you are somebody who works in a loyalty program, very interested in learning more, or perhaps even you're a bit new to loyalty and you're wanting to expand your knowledge, but you're not a VP or a C-suite, is this event over their heads, or they're still going to get value out of attending?
I think they'll still get value out of attending, because ultimately what they have to do is sell things up through their organization, and they're going to be much more capable of addressing the strategic issues that matter to the ultimate decision makers inside the organization. So I think it's going to be really compelling for everybody, especially because as loyalty has expanded naturally, right, there's a law of diminishing returns in place in terms of the depth of expertise that people have. And this is a great compliment to organizations that are out there educating people about loyalty, like the Loyalty Academy does. But this is real time, this is dynamic, it's interactive, and the brands that are going to be there and accessible for people to meet with and talk with is going to be pretty unique, especially with a focus on loyalty and CX.
I think you're 100% right, and that's my takeaway, from the previous events as well. As I think that it's, the ability to perhaps speak the language, and understand, the perspective from the top of the organization down, as well as, from the working teams up, and see there's actually a lot of commonality there. It's just, I think, it's almost like that Venn diagram, you have a crossover right in the middle where you have those common challenges. And if everybody's speaking the same language and understanding, hey, what is it the CFO needs? What is it the CO needs, the CMO? What can you do to help them do their jobs is going to make it easier for them to help you do your job. And I think that was, there's the old stereotype of loyalty and the CFO, or loyalty and finance butting heads, or in the airline industry, loyalty and revenue management butting heads. There's always some truth to that, and even still today. But I don't think it fits that stereotype as much anymore as it used to, because finance, revenue management, these parts of the organizations, certainly more mature organizations, absolutely understand the value contribution of loyalty. But on a day-to-day basis, your individual initiatives, your individual projects, you still need buy-in across the organization. And it's it's the bane of every loyalty manager's existence, of having to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it can be incredibly frustrating. So helping to understand, well, how do I bridge those gaps? How do I speak the language? Maybe some shortcuts to take where I can get everybody on the same page quicker and give everybody a win in the pocket, is always a good takeaway from these events. February 5th to 6th at the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles, Loyalty Summit CXM. More information at loyaltysummitcxm.com. Phil Rubin is our event chair for Loyalty Summit CXM. Phil, I know we're going to be having a lot more conversations, both you and I, but also with some of our speakers that are coming up as we come forward over the following weeks. I mean, it's really not that far away. We're already into December, which is crazy. So we're basically, we have January, we have beginning of February. We are really not far away at all. About, what is that, 8-9 weeks off the top of my head. So looking forward to more conversations. If people want more information, they can obviously reach out. And again, loyaltysummitcxm.com. I would say, Phil made a really good point a couple of moments ago. We do really endeavor to keep Loyalty Summit and Loyalty Summit CXM events, a bit more intimate in terms of numbers. So, we don't have unlimited tickets available. I can certainly tell you, putting my Travel Loyalty Summit hat on, that the last few Loyalty Summit events have been completely sold out. So if you wait to the last minute for a ticket, you may very well miss out. If you're thinking about coming to Loyalty Summit CXM Los Angeles, I would urge you to sign up sooner rather than later. If for no other reason than ticket prices get more expensive later on, but also there is a real risk we will sell out because we do cap the numbers.
Good point.
Phil, thanks for joining. Thanks for chatting. I'm looking forward to talking a lot more about CXM with you and our guests over the coming weeks as we get closer to the event. Thanks for joining once again.
You bet. Thanks, David. See you guys in LA.